She slid a plate of food toward the hungry man sitting outside. The manager stormed out. "You feeding him with our food? He's not even a paying customer." When she said, "He's just hungry," the manager shouted, "He's a filthy beggar and you're fired." The man looked up, eyes tired but kind. He whispered, "Thank you, ma'am." The next morning, 5 black SUVs rolled up to that same diner. Before I dive into this incredible and heartbreaking story, please take a moment and subscribe to our channel so we can bring even more powerful stories like these. The Alabama sun hadn't fully climbed the sky yet, just a thin gold streak slipping through the clouds, warming the cracked pavement of Highway 42. The world smelled like diesel, fried grease, and tired dreams. That was the scent of mornings at Grady's Family Diner. The kind of place that never changed, no matter how much time tried to move on. The screen door squeaked as Sarah Collins pushed it open with her hip. 28, wiry from long shifts, her brown hair tied up in a messy knot. There were faint circles under her eyes, the kind that no amount of coffee could fix. Her faded blue uniform hugged her like a second skin, and her white sneakers, once clean, were now patterned with stains that told their own history of spills and scrubbing. Inside, the diner was waking up. The hum of the old refrigerator, the hiss of bacon on the griddle, and the dull chatter of morning regulars who came in more out of habit than hunger. The bell over the door jingled every few minutes, a sound that felt as familiar to Sarah as her own heartbeat. The walls were covered in old photographs, some of them yellowed from age, of Grady shaking hands with local mayors, holding fishing trophies, and smiling next to his famous burgers. The man himself, Frank Grady, sat in his usual spot behind the register, flipping through receipts like they were pages in the Bible. Mid-50s, thick mustache, gut spilling over his belt, and eyes that always looked for mistakes before people. He didn't greet Sarah when she walked in. He just said, without looking up, "You're 3 minutes late." Sarah sighed softly. "Morning to you too, Mr. Grady." He grunted. "Clock in. Got a church group coming through at 9. Don't be giving away no extra syrup like last time. That stuff costs money." "Yes, sir," she replied, tying her apron tight. It was easier to agree than argue. Behind the counter, she started prepping coffee pots, the rich smell filling the air. Her hands moved with quiet rhythm. Wipe the counter, pour the brew, restock the sugar caddies. She'd done it so long it felt like muscle memory. Outside, through the window, she could see him, the man everyone in town called that stray, Raymond. He sat under the big metal sign that read Grady's Family Diner since 1963, his back against the post, a cardboard sign resting across his knees. "We'll work for food." He never begged, never called out, just sat there with that same quiet dignity every morning as the world passed him by. Sarah watched him while she filled coffee mugs for the first wave of regulars. "Don't stare too long, sweetheart," one of the older customers, a man named Chuck, said with a smirk. "You'll catch his fleas." Sarah smiled politely, but didn't reply. She'd learned early that arguing with men like Chuck was like spitting into the wind. It only came back at you. By 7:30, the diner was full of the same faces, truckers, retirees, and the gossip circle of women who never missed a morning. They talked loud about things that didn't matter: football, gas prices, who got arrested last week, all while pretending the man outside wasn't there. Every now and then the bell jingled as customers came and went, but no one ever held the door open for Raymond. Sarah glanced out again when she thought no one was watching. Raymond was sipping water from a paper cup someone must have given him earlier, his hands trembling slightly. His face was lined and sunburned, his beard silver gray, eyes sharp but kind. She didn't know why she noticed him so much. Maybe because he reminded her of her father. Same quiet strength, same air of pride hidden beneath hardship. She remembered her dad used to say, "Some folks just fall through the cracks, baby. Doesn't mean they deserve to starve down there." Her shift dragged on. The orders came in. Plates clattered. Laughter rose and fell like background noise. Mr. Grady walked around counting napkins, muttering about inventory like it was life or death. "Sarah," he barked from the counter, "quit daydreaming and refill table 5. "Yes, sir." She grabbed the pot and made her way over, forcing a smile for the customers. Her kindness wasn't for tips. It was habit. It was armor. Around 11, when the lunch prep started, the heat in the diner thickened. Sarah wiped sweat from her neck and leaned against the counter, catching her breath. Through the window again, Raymond was still there. Same spot. Same stillness. Something in her chest tightened. She thought about how many plates of food she carried out every day. Burgers half-eaten, fries wasted, pancakes left to go cold. How easy it would be to save just one meal for him. She'd done it before, quietly, carefully. A sandwich here, a biscuit there. Always making sure Mr. Grady didn't see. Because she knew how he felt about charity. He'd said once, loud enough for everyone to hear, "If folks are hungry, they can work. Ain't nobody eating for free in my place." Sarah knew better than to argue, but she also knew what hunger looked like, not from others, but from her own nights. Some weeks, dinner for her and her little boy was whatever was left from the diner's shift end. She looked at the clock. Almost noon. The lunch crowd would start soon. But before that, she decided, one plate, just one. She glanced at Grady. He was in the back, counting inventory again, oblivious. She started packing up a small to-go box with leftover pancakes, some scrambled eggs, a piece of toast. Not enough to make him notice, just enough to make a difference. When she was done, she wrapped it carefully, wiped her hands on her apron, and took a deep breath. Outside, the sunlight had turned bright and unforgiving. The air smelled of heat and exhaust. Raymond lifted his eyes when he saw her coming. Sarah held out the box. "It ain't much," she said softly, "but it's warm." Raymond smiled, a slow, grateful smile that reached his tired eyes. "You're an angel, miss. Ain't many like you left." She smiled faintly. "Don't tell my boss." He chuckled quietly. "Wouldn't dream of it." For a moment, it felt like the world had tilted just right. Two people seeing each other like equals. But inside the diner, through the reflection in the window, she didn't notice the shadow moving. A figure stepping toward the door, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Grady." The air shifted the second Mr. Grady's boots hit the pavement. That old screen door banged behind him like a gunshot. The sound snapped Sarah out of her small moment of peace. She froze mid-step, the to-go box still in her hands. Grady's shadow stretched long across the concrete as he stepped forward, eyes narrowing, face twisted in disbelief that his rules, his control, had been broken. His white apron was dusted with flour, his neck red from heat and anger. "What's this?" he barked, voice slicing through the hum of the highway. "You feedin' strays again, Sarah?" His words echoed off the diner's glass front. Inside, forks stopped clinking. Heads turned toward the window like spectators at a show they'd seen before. Sarah's throat. He cut her off, pointing a thick finger toward Raymond. "You think this is a charity? You think I'm running a soup kitchen here?" Raymond shifted uncomfortably, lowering his gaze. He started to speak, but Grady waved a hand. Don't. Not a damn word out of you. The humiliation hit like a slap. The heat outside seemed to thicken, pressing down on all three of them. Sarah swallowed hard. Sir, I was just giving him some leftovers. Food that was going to be thrown out anyway. Grady laughed, the sound sharp and ugly. You don't decide what's wasted around here. I do. From inside, someone whispered, She's at it again. Another chuckled. The bell over the diner door jingled faintly as a customer leaned closer to the glass. Raymond's hands trembled as he tried to hand the box back. Ma'am, it's fine. I didn't ask her for nothing. Sarah turned toward him, shaking her head. No, keep it. It's okay. But Grady wasn't done. You hear yourself? It's okay? You act like you own this place. He took another step closer, his face flushed with self-righteous fury. Let me tell you something, Sarah. You can't save every bum sitting out here with a sob story. Half of them chose this life. The words hung in the air, harsh, absolute. Raymond looked up then, his voice steady but low. No one chooses to be hungry, sir. That did it. Grady's jaw tightened, his pride hip like a bruise. You shut your mouth before I call the cops, he snapped. Ain't nobody talking to you. Sarah's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed calm. He's not hurting anyone. He just wanted something to eat. Grady sneered, his lip curling. He's hurting my business. People don't want to see that when they eat. Makes them lose their appetite. Inside the diner, laughter rippled through a booth. One man muttered, Ain't wrong, though. Another smirked. The humiliation burned deep, not just for Sarah, but for Raymond, who sat still, silent, dignity shrinking with every word spoken around him. Grady folded his arms. You know what your problem is, girl? You care too damn much about people who don't matter. That was it, the final line, the kind that cuts through a person's soul and leaves something raw and permanent behind. Sarah took a breath, looked him square in the eye. He does matter. The diner went completely silent. Even the hum of the grill seemed to pause. Grady blinked, taken aback by her defiance. Then, slowly, that smug smile returned, the one that made her stomach twist. Well then, he said, voice dripping with false sweetness, you can go join him. The words hit like thunder. He reached up, grabbed the strap of her apron, and ripped it loose. It fell to the concrete between them, the fabric darkened by grease stains and months of wear. All those mornings and nights, reduced to nothing in a second. Consider yourself done, he said flatly. I don't pay people to make me look like a fool. Sarah's lips parted, but no words came. Her throat burned. The sound of whispering behind the glass grew louder, like the town itself was judging her. Raymond stood up slowly, his frame tall despite the years on his shoulders. His voice was soft, almost trembling. Sir, please, she didn't do nothing wrong. I can... Grady's face darkened. You say one more word, old man, and I'll call Sheriff Dan myself. Trespassing, loitering, take your pick. Raymond froze. His eyes dropped to the ground again. Grady turned back to Sarah, his voice lowering just enough to twist the knife. You can eat with him now. Maybe he'll share his cardboard palace with you. Laughter broke out from somewhere inside, low, awkward, but real. The kind of laughter that fills the gaps where empathy used to live. Sarah bent down, picked up her apron, and folded it in half. She didn't cry in front of them. She wouldn't give them that. Her voice was quiet, steady. You'll regret this one day, Mr. Grady, he scoffed. Only thing I regret is hiring you. She turned and walked away, her shoes crunching against the gravel, every step echoing through the hot, empty air. Behind her, the laughter faded. The world went still again, the same world she had tried to make kinder. Just inside, Mr. Grady poured himself another cup of coffee, acting like nothing had happened, like cruelty was just part of the morning shift. The sound of Sarah's footsteps faded into the afternoon heat, swallowed by the roar of passing trucks and the hum of cicadas. The highway stretched endless ahead of her, a ribbon of cracked asphalt shimmering under the Alabama sun. Behind her, the diner door slammed shut. Grady's voice echoed faintly through the glass. "Back to work, folks. Ain't no charity drive today." Laughter followed. That cruel, hollow kind that people use to fill their own guilt. Sarah didn't turn around. Her apron, still folded neatly in her hand, felt heavier than it should have. Every step she took was a mix of anger, heartbreak, and something deeper: disappointment. Not just in Grady, not just in the town, but in the silence of it all. Inside the diner, the world kept moving like nothing had happened. The grill hissed, forks clinked, and people went back to their conversations about weather and football. Anything to drown out what they'd just seen. Grady leaned on the counter, proud of himself, puffing out his chest like a man who thought cruelty was a virtue. "Maybe next time y'all'll think before handing out freebies to every drifter that walks by," he said loudly. Someone chuckled from a booth. "Ain't no harm teaching a lesson." But not everyone laughed. A young waitress named Lily, barely 20, stood frozen near the register. Lily swallowed her words and turned away, guilt knotting in her chest. Outside, Raymond sat still for a long time after Sarah left. The to-go box lay open beside him, steam gone, syrup glistening in the light. He didn't eat. Not yet. He stared at the diner's window, at his own reflection staring back. The face of a man people saw as less than human. After a few minutes, he picked up the food and whispered a small prayer before eating. "Thank you for her kindness, Lord. Protect her. She's got a good heart in a hard world." Sarah walked for miles, past gas stations, empty fields, and rusted mailboxes leaning like tired men. She didn't cry. Not right away. She kept her chin up, focused on the road, the same way she had every time life tried to break her. She thought of her son, Jake, 7 years old, waiting for her to pick him up from school later. What was she going to tell him? That she'd lost her job because she was kind? That doing the right thing had cost her tea? The thought made her chest tighten. Tears came then, quiet and stubborn, falling fast down her sunburned cheeks. She stopped by a small creek, sat on a rock, and let the sobs come. Not loud, not dramatic, just exhausted. The kind of crying that comes from too many small defeats finally piling up. She pulled the folded paycheck from her apron pocket. $56, her final pay. It wouldn't even cover groceries. By sundown, she made it back to her small rented house at the edge of town. The place was old, walls cracked, the porch uneven, but it was home. Jake came running out, his backpack bouncing, his hair messy. "Mama," he shouted, hugging her waist. "You're home early." She forced a smile, hugging him back tight. "Yeah, baby, I'm home early." He looked up at her face, frowning. "You okay?" Sarah nodded. "Just tired, sweetheart. Go wash up. I'll make you dinner." She didn't have much. A can of beans, some rice, and half a loaf of bread. But she cooked it anyway, humming softly, so Jake wouldn't hear the shake in her voice. When he was asleep later that night, she sat by the window, watching headlights sweep past. The world outside looked cold and small. She thought about Raymond, wondered if he was still sitting under that sign, or if Grady had chased him off too. and somewhere deep in her chest, a whisper came. The kind her mother used to say when life got cruel. What's meant for you won't miss you. Back at the diner, Grady was bragging again. A few regulars clapped him on the back. "You did right," one said. "Ain't good business letting those people hang around." Grady smirked. "Yeah, well, somebody's got to keep standards around here." He didn't notice the silence growing in the corner booth. Two strangers had come in earlier. Middle-aged, dressed too well for this place. They'd ordered coffee, but barely touched it. One leaned over to the other and murmured, "Get that on record?" The other nodded, adjusting a small camera pin on his jacket. That night, the town went quiet. The sky was a deep blue bruise, heavy with stars. Raymond lay under the diner sign, wrapped in his old blanket, staring up at the heavens. He wasn't bitter. He'd seen this kind of cruelty before, in war, in life, in people's eyes when they forgot they were human. But what he hadn't seen in a long time was someone like Sarah. Someone who looked at him and didn't see a problem, just a person. He whispered again, his voice calm but certain. "God don't sleep." A car passed by, headlights flashing across the cardboard sign beside him. The words "will work for food" gleamed for a second before fading into the dark. Raymond smiled faintly, pulling his blanket tighter. "Tomorrow's comin'," he said softly, "and it's gonna be something." In her little house miles away, Sarah sat by the window, sipping the last of her cheap instant coffee, eyes tired, but still searching for hope. In the distance, thunder rolled low, not from a storm, but from the engines of something greater already moving her way. The world didn't know it yet, but the man she'd fed that afternoon wasn't who they thought he was. And the diner that humiliated her was about to become the stage for its own reckoning. The next day dawned just like any other. Same sun, same tired highway, same stale smell of grease rolling out of the kitchen vents. Inside Grady's family diner, the world carried on like nothing had happened. Mr. Grady whistled while flipping through the register receipts, his mood smug and satisfied. He'd slept well. Firing Sarah had felt, to him, like a victory. He liked reminding people who's boss. The diner opened at 6 sharp. By 6:15, the first regulars were already in their booths, swapping gossip and sipping bitter coffee. "Can't believe she talked back like that," one said. "Some folks don't know their place," another replied. Grady chuckled behind the counter, wiping a glass. "Yeah, well, maybe she'll learn now. You feed one stray, they all start coming around." Lily, the young waitress who'd watched it all yesterday, stood silently at the coffee pot. She didn't meet anyone's eyes. Every word out of Grady's mouth felt like a knife. She'd thought about quitting that night. Even wrote the text, "I can't work for you anymore." But she didn't send it. Rent was rent. Fear was stronger than pride sometimes. Still, something about the air that morning felt different. Too quiet, too still, like the moment before thunder breaks. Around 8, the sunlight caught the diner windows just right, sharp enough to sting the eyes. Grady shielded his face, squinting toward the parking lot. That's when he saw them. 5 black SUVs, shiny enough to blind, rolling down Highway 42 like a convoy. They slowed, turned into the gravel lot, and parked side by side. The engines idled, deep and steady, like the growl of something powerful. The chatter inside the diner faltered. Heads turned, forks froze halfway to mouths. "What in the world?" someone muttered. Grady frowned, straightening his apron. "Probably some city inspectors," he said, though his voice wavered a little. "Y'all relax." But when the SUV doors opened, the air in the diner shifted again. Men stepped out, Tall, suited, polished. Not locals, not inspectors either. The kind of men who didn't walk. They arrived. Polished shoes hit gravel. Sunglasses gleamed. Each of them moved with quiet purpose, scanning the diner like they were confirming a location they'd already studied. Lily whispered, "Mr. Grady, who are they?" He forced a laugh. "Hell if I know. Probably lost." But his voice lacked its usual bite. The doorbell jingled softly as the first man walked in. Tall, dark-haired, mid-40s maybe, clean-cut, posture straight as a ruler. His suit was pressed, his shoes spotless. The kind of man who looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not a diner. Grady plastered on his fake smile, the one he used for customers with money. "Morning, gentlemen. Can I help you?" The man's voice was calm, even. "We're here to see the owner." Grady puffed out his chest. "That'd be me." The man nodded once. "Mr. Frank Grady?" "That's right." The man motioned, and the others followed him inside. They took up space without even trying, the kind of presence that made people instinctively sit straighter, talk softer. The entire diner went silent. Even the coffee pot stopped gurgling. The man opened the sleek black folder and placed it on the counter in front of Grady. "Then we'll speak here." Grady blinked, thrown off by the man's tone, respectful but sharp enough to cut through his false confidence. Sure thing. What's this about?" The man met his eyes. "We represent Mr. Raymond Carter." Grady's eyebrows shot up, confusion turning to a smirk. "Raymond Carter? You mean that homeless guy from yesterday?" He laughed, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "You telling me that bums got lawyers now?" A few customers snickered. The man didn't smile. "Yes, he does." That shut the room up real fast. Lily froze where she stood, heart pounding. She remembered the way Raymond had sat quietly every morning, polite, patient, invisible. And now, a team of men in suits were standing here for him. Grady cleared his throat, trying to laugh it off. All right, this some kind of prank? Who's paying for this? Y'all from one of them social experiment channels?" The man ignored him. "Mr. Carter is a retired Army colonel and philanthropist. He's been traveling across the South, evaluating how businesses treat people experiencing homelessness." The words hit the diner like a thunderclap. "Colonel?" someone whispered. "No way," said another. Grady's jaw hung open. His face went pale, the blood draining from his cheeks. You can't be serious." The man slid a single photograph from the folder. A military portrait of Raymond in uniform, medals gleaming. "This is your stray, Mr. Grady." The man's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You failed that test, publicly and on camera." Grady blinked. "On what?" The man nodded toward one of his colleagues, who pulled out a tablet. On the screen, clear as day, was yesterday's footage. Sarah handing food to Raymond. Grady storming out, his words loud and hateful. The firing, the laughter. Someone, maybe one of those customers, had filmed the whole thing. "It's already online," the man said quietly. He turned to leave, pausing just long enough to glance back over his shoulder. "Mr. Carter will be here shortly. I suggest you treat him better this time." Then the suited men walked out, silent and precise as they came, leaving Grady standing there, mouth open, sweat glistening under the fluorescent light. Inside, the crowd buzzed with whispers. Phones came out, pictures snapped. The town gossip wheel was already turning. Lily stood frozen, tears in her eyes. She whispered under her breath, Sarah was right. Out in the distance, the rumble of another engine grew louder, slower, deeper. Grady looked through the window and saw a sleek black sedan turning into the parking lot. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Raymond Carter. Clean-shaven, fresh haircut, crisp navy suit, polished shoes, the same calm eyes, the same quiet dignity. But this time, the whole world was looking, and Grady, for the first time in his life, had nothing to say. The diner door opened slow, the little brass bell chiming once, soft, but it cut through the silence like thunder. Every head in the room turned. Raymond Carter stepped inside. The same man who'd once sat outside under that rusted sign, now standing tall in a tailored navy suit that fit like it was made for him. His beard trimmed, hair combed back, his shoes so clean they caught the light. The cardboard sign that once read, "We'll work for food," was gone, replaced by the quiet weight of command in his posture. But what hadn't changed were his eyes. Calm, watchful. The kind of eyes that had seen too much and still found grace in the wreckage. The air in the diner went thin. Grady's voice cracked before it even found its footing. "Raymond? Colonel? Mr. Carter? I didn't—" Raymond raised a hand. The room froze. "Please," he said softly. "Just Raymond will do." He stepped further in, his footsteps measured, heavy with authority. The sunlight from the window stretched across the floor, catching on the gold ring on his right hand. For the first time since Sarah had been fired, Grady didn't look like a man in control. He looked small. Raymond stopped at the counter. His lawyer, the tall man from earlier, stood just behind him, expression neutral. Grady wiped his hands on his apron, fumbling. "Look, I didn't know who you were. You gotta believe me. It was a misunderstanding." Raymond's voice stayed calm, steady. "You're right about one thing, Mr. Grady. You didn't know who I was, and that's the whole problem." Grady blinked, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Raymond said, "you treated me like You looked at a man sitting under your sign and saw trash. Not a veteran who'd given his best years for a country that lets men like you decide who's worth a meal." Every word was slow, deliberate, echoing in that small diner, like judgment itself. One of the regulars, Chuck, shifted uncomfortably in his booth, his coffee untouched. The room that once cheered Grady's cruelty now stared at him in silence. Raymond reached into his jacket and placed a small envelope on the counter. "This is the official paperwork," his lawyer said. "Effective immediately, this establishment, Grady's Family Diner, is being purchased in full by Mr. Carter's foundation." Grady's mouth fell open. You can't just—" "Oh, I can," Raymond said quietly, "and I already did." Gasps rippled through the room. The lawyer slid a document across the counter. "You'll find the deposit confirmation attached. The sale closed this morning." Grady snatched the papers, scanning them in disbelief. The diner's name, his name, everything he thought was his, signed away. "Why?" he croaked. "Why do this to me?" Raymond looked him dead in the eye. "Because this place isn't yours anymore. It belongs to every person you made feel less than human." He turned slightly toward the dining area. "I spent months visiting small towns like this one," he said, his voice carrying to every corner. "Sometimes dressed in rags, sometimes in uniform, always watching. Because how we treat people when no one's watching, that's who we really are." No one dared speak. Even the old ceiling fan seemed to slow down to listen. "Yesterday," he continued, "one person here chose kindness over fear. One person saw a man, not a burden." He looked toward Lily first. "Miss, thank you for trying to help yesterday. I saw your face. But there's someone else I came to find. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Sarah's final paycheck, creased from being handled too many times. She left this behind when she walked away, Raymond said. That woman lost her job for showing compassion. Her name was Sarah Collins. The name landed like a prayer. Half the people in the diner dropped their eyes in shame. Lily whispered, "She didn't deserve what happened." "No," Raymond agreed softly. "She didn't. But sometimes God lets good people fall in front of the crowd, so everyone can see who pushed them." Grady swallowed hard, his face blotchy red. "Look, Mr. Carter, I made a mistake. I'll make it right. I'll rehire her. I'll give her back pay." Raymond raised his hand again, quieting him. "You won't need to." He glanced toward the door, and as if on cue, it opened. Sarah stood there, same uniform, same tired sneakers, but her posture was different now. Shoulders squared, chin lifted. Her eyes widened as she saw Raymond standing there, clean cut and powerful. "Raymond?" she whispered. He smiled warmly. "It's Colonel Carter, technically, but I think I like how you said it better." The room held its breath. Raymond stepped forward, holding out his hand. "Ma'am, I owe you more than you'll ever know." Sarah blinked, tears already forming. "I don't understand." "You will," he said gently, "because I'm giving you your job back, but not as a waitress." He turned toward the crowd, his voice rising. "Effective immediately, Miss Sarah Collins is the new manager of this diner. Or rather, the new diner." Grady gawked, speechless. You can't just replace me." Raymond looked at him calmly. "I already did." Applause broke out, soft at first, then growing. Lily clapped through tears. The regulars who mocked Sarah now found themselves cheering, some out of guilt, others out of sheer awe. Sarah stood there, stunned. "Mr. Carter, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he said simply. Her lip trembled as she nodded. "Yes, of course yes." Raymond turned to Grady one last time. "You called me a stray," he said, voice calm but cutting. "You called her a fool. But the truth is, we both found more dignity on the sidewalk than you ever had behind that counter." Grady didn't answer. His hands shook as he ripped off his apron and threw it aside, storming out the door into the blinding sunlight. No one stopped him. No one cared. Raymond looked back at Sarah. "You'll rename it whatever you like. Just remember what brought you here." He handed her a single card embossed with gold lettering. The Carter Foundation. ... If you ever need anything, he said quietly, call that number. But something tells me you won't need much help. Sarah stood in the middle of the diner that once broke her heart. The same tables, the same smell of coffee and grease. But now, the weight in the air had shifted. "Miss Collins?" Lily said softly, wiping her eyes. "What are you going to call it?" Sarah looked out the window, where the morning light hit the old metal sign. Then she smiled. Angel's Diner. The room erupted in applause, and behind it all, Raymond Carter smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes when justice finally finds its voice. By sunrise the next morning, the story had already crossed state lines. Phones buzzed. News anchors spoke the same words in different accents. Kind waitress fired for feeding homeless man. Turns out, he's a retired Army colonel. They said it like a headline. But for Sarah, it wasn't news. It was her life. The parking lot outside Angel's Diner was jammed with cameras. Satellite trucks lined the road, reporters standing shoulder to shoulder, microphones ready, eyes hungry for quotes. The sign had changed overnight. The old Grady's Family Diner letters pulled down, replaced by a temporary banner in red and gold. Angel's Diner, where kindness is served. Sarah hadn't asked for all this. She never wanted to be anyone's hero. She just wanted to work hard, feed her boy, and go home without being humiliated. Now her name was trending. Her picture, a still from the video, holding that to-go box with a nervous smile, was everywhere. Inside, the diner buzzed with new energy. Fresh paint smell still lingered, tables gleamed. The jukebox worked again for the first time in years. Sarah moved behind the counter, adjusting things, still trying to believe this was real. "Ma'am, can I get you to smile for the camera?" a reporter called. She shook her head. "Not today. I got work." Raymond Carter stood nearby, talking quietly to his lawyer. His presence still carried that quiet authority, but he seemed content to fade into the background. The world didn't know the full story, the undercover project, the months he'd spent testing towns across the South. But word was spreading fast. Some folks online called him the homeless colonel. Others called him the angel in disguise. He didn't like either title. He just said, people needed to see what kindness looks like when it costs something. Meanwhile, across town, Frank Grady was watching it all unfold on his dusty TV in his now empty house. He sat in a recliner, bathrobe half-buttoned, face unshaven, the blinds pulled shut. The reporter's voice filled the silence. Former diner owner Frank Grady has declined to comment after being accused of firing waitress Sarah Collins for feeding a homeless man, who was later revealed to be Colonel Raymond Carter, a decorated veteran. They even showed his mugshot from an old fishing license, unflattering, mean-eyed. Grady cursed under his breath. "Bunch of vultures," he muttered, switching channels. But everyone told the same story. The local sheriff had stopped by earlier, not for an arrest, but to check in. Turns out, when you humiliate a war hero on camera, the hate mail doesn't take long to find you. He'd already lost his business, his reputation, his friends, and now his pride was the only thing left. And even that was cracking. Back at the diner, Sarah was learning how fast the world could move when it cared. A woman from Birmingham dropped off flowers. A church group brought homemade pies. A local veterans organization showed up with flags, shaking Raymond's hand and saluting him like he was still on duty. One of them, a gray-haired man with a missing arm, said softly, "You reminded folks that service ain't just about uniforms, it's about heart." Raymond smiled humbly. Then maybe the mission worked. Sarah glanced up from the counter. "Mission?" He chuckled. "Long story. Let's just say I've been looking for proof that decency still lives somewhere in America. Found it right here in this diner." By noon, the small-town diner had turned into a national symbol. Camera crews filmed every plate that left. "My message?" He looked out at the flashing cameras. "Treat people right, not because of who they are, but because of who you are." The microphones leaned closer. "Do you forgive Frank Grady?" He smiled faintly. "Forgiveness is easy. Forgetting's harder. But I pray he learns something from this. Maybe then we both win." That night, the diner closed early. The news crews had finally left. The town quieted down again, like the world had exhaled. Sarah stood by the door, counting the day's receipts. More money in one day than Grady had seen in weeks. She looked up at the sign glowing in the dark. Angel's Diner. Raymond joined her outside, coffee in hand. "Place looks good, manager." She smiled. "Still getting used to that title." He nodded. "You earned it." They stood there in silence for a while, watching the highway lights roll by. Then she asked softly, "Why me, Raymond? Out of everyone you met, why stop here?" He looked out toward the stars. "Because you didn't see what I looked like. You saw what I was worth. And that's rare these days." Sarah's eyes glistened. "You think the world'll ever change?" Raymond chuckled. "The world? Maybe not. But people? Yeah. One plate of food at a time." Meanwhile, across the street, a man sat in his truck, watching the diner lights fade. Frank Grady. He didn't get out, didn't go inside, just sat there, engine off, watching the sign that used to bear his name, now glowing brighter than ever. He whispered to himself, voice cracked and hollow, "Guess God don't sleep after all." Then he started the truck and drove off into the night. By morning, every major outlet had covered the story. Time magazine called it the kindness revolution. CNN ran a segment titled, "From Fired Waitress to Folk Hero." Army released a statement honoring Raymond Carter's continued service to humanity. But Sarah didn't watch any of it. She was back behind the counter, pouring coffee for truckers and travelers, the same way she always had. Except now, every cup came with a side of respect. 3 weeks later, the sun over Highway 42 hit different. It didn't glare down. It glowed. The same stretch of cracked asphalt that had carried so much bitterness now led to something brighter. Angel's Diner. The sign was new, white enamel with gold trim, and below the name, in smaller cursive, read the words, "No one leaves hungry." The parking lot stayed full now. Not just truckers and locals, but families, veterans, single mothers, college kids, anyone who'd heard the story. Inside, the air felt alive. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with something softer, gratitude. Sarah moved through the room like she belonged there, because now she did. Her name tag read manager, but the way she talked to people, laughed with them, wiped down counters like she always had, it wasn't about titles. It was about heart. Lily worked the register, smiling bright, her nerves long gone. 2 of the older regulars helped deliver plates when the crowd got heavy. Even the gossip ladies from the corner booth pitched in with napkins one morning, mumbling about doing right by the girl we wronged. And every day at noon, a quiet tradition began. Sarah would step outside, place one warm meal on a small wooden bench by the sign, and leave it there. No fanfare, no announcements, just food, for whoever needed it. Sometimes the plate was gone within minutes. Sometimes it sat untouched until dusk. But it was always there. A news crew came back once to film a follow-up segment. They asked Sarah, "Why keep leaving that plate out there?" She smiled softly. "Because once, someone told me kindness don't need an audience." And he was right. The clip went viral again, not because of drama, but because of peace. The image of that small plate of food under the sign became a symbol, reposted, painted, printed on t-shirts and murals across the South. Inside the diner, the decor had changed too. Where Grady once hung his fishing trophies, Sarah had put up framed photos sent by customers. Soldiers reunited with families, kids eating free breakfasts, handwritten notes that said, "Thank you." At the end of the counter sat a small brass plaque, dedicated to Raymond Carter, for reminding us that kindness is the highest rank. Raymond hadn't been seen in days. He told Sarah before leaving, "I've got other places to visit, other hearts to test." He left behind nothing but a short letter, tucked under a salt shaker. "Keep feeding people. The world's watching now. R.C." Sometimes Sarah caught herself looking out the window during slow hours, half expecting, but the bench stayed empty, and that was okay. He'd given her something better than company. Purpose. By the fourth week, Angel's Diner had become a community landmark. Local radio ran ads for it free of charge. Church groups volunteered to cover shifts on holidays. A veterans organization donated a small scholarship fund in Sarah's name for single parents chasing second chances. Her son Jake helped after school, wiping tables, his little hands working proudly. One evening he looked up and said, "Mama, Mr. Raymond's like one of them angels, huh?" Sarah smiled, ruffling his hair. "Maybe, but sometimes angels don't have wings. Sometimes they just show you." Someone had left a fresh bouquet of white lilies on the bench by the sign. No note, just the flowers. Sarah walked out, the neon glow painting her face gold and pink. She touched one of the petals, smiled faintly, and whispered, "Thank you, Colonel." Then she carried the bouquet inside, placing it next to the plaque. Weeks later, the story still traveled. People drove hours just to eat there, not because the food was fancy. It wasn't, but because it felt honest. Customers left with full stomachs and lighter hearts. Some cried, some hugged Sarah. Most just smiled and said, "Thank you for reminding us people can still be good." Every night, after closing, she'd sit at the counter with a cup of coffee and look around at what she'd built. The old neon lights hummed gently, the smell of pie still hanging in the air. She'd think of Raymond, of that first act of kindness that had cost her everything and given her even more back. And then she'd carry at her, "Thank you." And she'd whisper the same words she told herself the day she lost her job. "What's meant for you won't miss you." This time, they didn't sound like comfort. They sounded like truth. The night hums soft over Alabama. The sky above Angel's Diner glows faintly orange from the old neon sign, flickering against a blanket of stars. The hum of distant crickets blends with the low whine of the highway, the same road that once carried strangers past this place without a glance. Now, people slow down when they see the light. Some stop just to take a photo. Others stop because they need a meal. But every single one leaves, knowing this diner isn't just about food. It's about worth. Inside, Sarah wipes down the counter, humming a tune her mother used to sing. Jake's asleep in the booth by the window, his homework open beside him, a pencil resting loose in his hand. The night shift's quiet now. The last customer's gone. It's just her, the hum of the fridge, and the low whisper, "Oh." She glances toward the small plaque on the wall, dedicated to Raymond Carter, for reminding us that kindness is the highest rank. Her hand rests against it for a moment. She still can't quite believe it all happened. The firing, the humiliation, the return. It all feels like a dream someone else lived. But then she looks out the window and sees the empty bench under the sign. And she remembers. Outside, a soft wind stirs the flowers at the base of the diner sign. The lilies from that anonymous bouquet sway gently. Sarah steps out with her coffee, the screen door creaking behind her. She stands on the porch, taking in the quiet stretch of road and the endless stars above it. Her voice drifts low, steady, reflective. They say angels come when you least expect them. I don't know about wings or halos, but I know this. Sometimes an angel shows up hungry, just to see if you'll feed him. She sips her coffee, smiling faintly. And sometimes the test ain't about how much you got. It's about how much heart you're willing to give. The camera drifts outward, the diner glowing warm against the cool night. The neon letters flicker once more, then hold steady. In towns across the country, similar diners hang up new signs that read, "No one leaves hungry." News anchors call it the angel movement. But for Sarah, it's simpler than that. She doesn't think of herself as a hero. She's just a woman who lost her job for doing what her heart said was right. When customers ask her how it feels to have changed the world, she always answers the same. "I didn't change the world. I just remembered we're supposed to care about each other." Later that week, a letter arrives. No return address. Inside, a single folded page and a pressed white lily. "Dear Sarah, you turned one small act into something the world couldn't ignore. Keep leading with kindness. I'll be watching from the next bench down the R." She presses the letter to her chest, tears filling her eyes, not from sadness, but gratitude, the kind that humbles you. She doesn't reply. She doesn't need to. Some things are better left in the silence between good souls. The camera pans out, slow, wide. We see the diner glowing against the dark stretch of highway. Cars pass by, headlights sweeping across the sign. Angel's Diner, no one leaves hungry. Sarah's voice carries one last time, calm and certain. "He taught me something that day. That kindness don't scream. It don't beg to be noticed. It just does what's right, even when no one's watching."